The fever had taken hold 3 days before the wagon train pulled away at dawn, and by the time Marianne Keller opened her eyes to find herself utterly alone on the Wyoming plains in August of 1867, she understood that her new husband had chosen survival over vows spoken only 6 weeks earlier. She lay beneath a thin blanket beside the cold remains of a campfire, her body still weak and trembling from the illness that had nearly claimed her life. The silence pressed against her ears with a weight she had never known, absent the creaking of wagon wheels, the lowing of oxen, the constant murmur of 100 souls traveling west together. They had left her water in a canteen, some dried meat wrapped in cloth, and nothing else. Not even a note, not even the decency of a goodbye from Thomas, who had promised her father he would cherish her until death parted them. Apparently, death had not needed to arrive to accomplish that particular parting. Marianne sat up slowly, her dark hair matted with sweat, her calico dress rumpled and soiled. She was 19 years old, and she was going to die out here in this endless sea of grass and sagebrush unless she could somehow walk herself to civilization. But which direction? The wagon train had been heading northwest toward Oregon Territory, but how far had they traveled while she was lost to fever dreams? How far back to Fort Laramie? The questions swirled in her mind as she forced herself to stand on shaking legs. She took stock of what little she had. The canteen was half full. The dried meat would last perhaps 2 days if she rationed carefully. Her shoes were worn but intact. She had no horse, no weapon, no map. The August sun beat down without mercy, and storm clouds gathered on the distant horizon. Marianne felt tears burn behind her eyes but refused to let them fall. Crying would not save her. Crying was a luxury for people who had someone to hear them. She chose a direction based on nothing but instinct and began to walk. The first day passed in a haze of pain and determination. Her legs felt like water beneath her, but she forced them to keep moving. She rationed her water to tiny sips that did nothing to ease the burning in her throat. When darkness fell, she huddled beneath a scrubby pine tree and shivered through the night, listening to the howls of distant wolves and praying they would not catch her scent. The second day was worse. The storm that had threatened arrived with vindictive fury, soaking her to the skin within minutes. The rain turned the ground to mud that sucked at her shoes with every step. Lightning split the sky and thunder rolled across the plains like cannon fire. She stumbled onward, no longer certain she was walking in any particular direction, knowing only that to stop was to die. By the third day, she had no water left and no food remaining. The sun had returned with renewed intensity, and Marianne's lips were cracked and bleeding. She fell more often than she walked, picking herself up each time with increasing difficulty. Her vision blurred and darkened at the edges. She thought of her mother, who had died bringing her into this world. She thought of her father, who had perished from pneumonia the winter before, leaving her with no choice but to accept Thomas Garrett's proposal of marriage. She thought of how foolish she had been to believe in promises. When she finally collapsed for the last time, face down in the sparse grass, she did not try to rise again. That was when she heard the horse. The sound of hooves registered in her fading consciousness like something from a dream. She managed to turn her head just enough to see the massive animal approaching, and atop it, a man who seemed carved from the mountains themselves. He dismounted in one fluid motion and crossed to her in 3 long strides. Strong hands turned her over with surprising gentleness. She looked up into a face weathered by sun and wind, framed by dark hair that fell past his shoulders. His eyes were the color of a stormy sky, and they studied her with an intensity that would have frightened her if she had possessed the strength for fear. "Easy now," he said, his voice a deep rumble. "I have got you." He lifted her as though she weighed nothing at all, cradling her against a chest that felt solid as oak. Marianne tried to speak, to thank him, but no sound emerged from her parched throat. She felt him carry her to his horse, felt him somehow mount while still holding her secure. Then, the world rocked gently as the horse began to move, and darkness claimed her once more. When consciousness returned, she found herself lying on soft furs in a structure made of logs. Firelight danced across rough-hewn walls. The air smelled of wood smoke and something cooking that made her empty stomach clench with hunger. She turned her head and saw him sitting near the fire, using a whetstone on a hunting knife with long, practiced strokes. He noticed her movement immediately and set the knife aside. "You are awake. Good." He reached for something beside him and approached. "You need to drink." He slipped one muscular arm behind her shoulders, lifting her enough to bring a tin cup to her lips. The water was cool and sweet, the best thing she had ever tasted. She drank greedily until he pulled it away. "Not too much at once," he said. "You will make yourself sick." His voice held a note of authority that suggested he was accustomed to being obeyed. Marianne studied him in the firelight, taking in details she had missed before. He was broad-shouldered and powerfully built, his arms corded with muscle beneath the rolled sleeves of his shirt. His hands were large and calloused, marked by the kind of strength that came from years of hard living. Yet those same hands had been gentle when they touched her. "Where am I?" she managed to whisper, her voice hoarse and broken. "My cabin, about 15 miles north of where I found you." He settled her back against the furs and returned to his seat. "Been out here 5 years now. Name is Owen Pike." "Marianne Keller." She paused, then added, "Thank you for saving my life." "You want to tell me how you ended up dying alone out on the plains?" The question was direct without pity, and somehow that made it easier to answer. "The wagon train left me. I had fever. My husband decided I was not worth the risk of delay." Something dark flickered across Owen's face. What kind of man abandons his wife? The kind who married for convenience rather than affection, I suppose. Marianne felt exhaustion pulling at her again. "I was foolish to believe otherwise." "You were not foolish. He was a coward." Owen stood and moved to the fire, ladling something from an iron pot into a wooden bowl. "You need to eat. Just broth for now. Your stomach cannot handle more yet." He fed her with the same patient care he had shown with the water, waiting while she took small sips, never rushing. The broth was rich and savory, warming her from the inside out. When she had consumed half the bowl, he set it aside. "You should rest more. Your body has been through hell." "Will you tell me where exactly we are? What territory?" "Wyoming territory, about 40 miles west of the Green River. Nearest town is a good 3 days' ride south. Not much to it anyway, just a trading post and a few buildings." Marianne absorbed this information, trying to calculate her options. She had no money, no possessions beyond the ruined dress she wore, no family waiting anywhere. The wagon train was long gone, and even if she could somehow catch up to them, she would rather die than crawl back to Thomas Garrett. "What will happen to me?" she asked quietly. Owen was silent for a long moment, staring into the fire. The flames cast shadows across his strong features, highlighting the hard line of his jaw, the prominent cheekbones. He looked like something out of a legend, like the mountain men she had heard stories about during the journey west. "That depends," he finally said. "You have people waiting for you in Oregon?" "No, no one anywhere." He nodded slowly, as though this confirmed something he had already suspected. "Then I suppose you will stay here until you are strong enough to decide what you want to do. After that, we will figure it out. I have no way to repay your kindness. Did not ask you to." He rose and moved to a corner of the cabin, pulling out additional furs. "You take the bed. I will sleep over here." "I cannot take your bed. You have already done too much." "You are taking the bed," he said firmly. "That is not a discussion." Despite her weakness, Marianne felt a flicker of irritation at his commanding tone. "I am not accustomed to being ordered about. And I am not accustomed to arguing with women I just pulled back from death's door. Sleep, Marianne Keller. We can debate territory in the morning." There was no real harshness in his words, and beneath the gruff exterior, she sensed genuine concern. Too tired to argue further, she let her eyes drift closed. Within moments, sleep claimed her. The days that followed took on a quiet rhythm. Marianne's strength returned gradually under Owen's capable care. He brought her meals at regular intervals, always making sure she ate slowly and did not overdo. He changed the furs on the bed without being asked, keeping everything clean and comfortable. He checked on her throughout the day, his presence both watchful and respectful. As she grew stronger, she began to observe him more carefully. He rose before dawn each morning, always quiet so as not to wake her. She would watch through half-closed eyes as he stoked the fire, prepared coffee in a battered pot, moved about the cabin with the efficiency of long practice. His body was a study in controlled power, every movement deliberate and sure. When he thought she was sleeping, his expression would soften, losing some of the hard edge he showed the world. By the end of the first week, Marianne was able to sit up without assistance and take short walks around the cabin. It was a simple structure, but well built, with tight corners and a solid roof. Owen had constructed everything himself, he told her, cutting the logs and hauling them into place with only his 2 hands and stubborn determination. "Why do you live out here alone?" she asked one evening as they sat by the fire. He had given her one of his extra shirts to wear while her dress dried from washing, and she was grateful for its warmth and the way it preserved her modesty. "Prefer my own company," he said. "Spent some years in civilization, if you can call Missouri that. Did not suit me. Too many people wanting things, telling you how to live. Out here, I answer to nobody but myself." "Do you never get lonely?" He was quiet for a moment, turning his coffee cup in his large hands. "Sometimes. But lonely is better than being surrounded by people who do not understand you. Learned that the hard way." There was a story there, she sensed, but she did not press. She was learning that Owen revealed things in his own time, and pushing only made him retreat further into silence. "What about you?" he asked, surprising her. "What made you agree to head west with a man you barely knew?" Marianne wrapped her arms around herself, the memories still painful. "My father died last November. We had nothing saved, and I had no skills that would earn decent wages. Thomas came to our church looking for a wife, someone to help him establish a farm in Oregon. My choices were to accept his proposal or end up in a workhouse. It seemed the better option at the time." "Some choice," Owen muttered darkly. "Many women face worse," she said with a shrug. "I am not unique in that regard. Should not have to choose between a loveless marriage and destitution. Perhaps not. But that is the world we live in." "Broken world," he said. Then he stood abruptly, as though uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "You should rest. Sun will be up early." She watched him retreat to his corner of the cabin, stretching out on the pile of furs with his back to her. Even in repose, he radiated strength and a kind of untamed energy that both fascinated and unsettled her. Marianne had never known a man like Owen Pike. Her father had been gentle and scholarly, more comfortable with books than physical labor. Thomas had been average in every way, neither cruel nor kind, just coldly practical. But Owen was something else entirely. He was raw capability and quiet competence, hardened by a life she could barely imagine. And yet beneath that rough exterior, she had glimpsed moments of surprising tenderness. The way he had fed her that first night, the care he took not to startle or frighten her, the respect he showed for her privacy and dignity. She found herself thinking about him more than was probably wise. By the second week, Marianne was strong enough to help around the cabin. She insisted, despite Owen's protests, needing to feel useful rather than simply a burden. She took over the cooking, discovering that he had a surprising variety of supplies stored away: flour and cornmeal, dried beans and preserved vegetables, coffee and salt and honey. He hunted regularly, keeping them supplied with fresh meat, and she learned to prepare venison and rabbit and wild turkey in ways that made the most of their flavors. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" he asked one evening, clearly impressed by the meal she had prepared. "My mother died when I was born, so my father raised me. He was hopeless in the kitchen, so I learned young out of necessity." She smiled at the memory. "He used to say I could make tree bark taste good if I had to." He was right about that. Owen cleaned his plate and reached for seconds. "This is better than anything I have eaten in 5 years. You have been surviving on your own cooking all this time?" Surviving is the key word. Did not starve, but did not exactly enjoy it either. They fell into comfortable conversation over the meal, and Marianne realized this was becoming routine. Each evening after supper they would sit by the fire and talk. Owen told her about the mountains, about tracking game and reading weather signs in the sky. He described winters so harsh that snow piled higher than a man's head, summers when the wildflowers turned the meadows into seas of color. He spoke of grizzly bears and mountain lions, of eagles and elk, of the fierce beauty of a land that cared nothing for human comfort or convenience. In turn, she told him about growing up in a small Pennsylvania town, about her father's love of poetry and music, about the dreams she had harbored of becoming a teacher before circumstances forced her hand. She had never talked so freely with anyone, had never felt so heard and understood. "You would have made a good teacher," Owen said thoughtfully. You explain things in a way that makes sense, patient about it too. That opportunity is long past, she said with a trace of bitterness. Maybe not. Things have a way of working out different than we expect. She looked at him curiously. Do you really believe that? I'm sitting here having the best meal of my life with a woman I found half dead on the plains 3 weeks ago. So yes, I believe things can surprise you. The words hung in the air between them, charged with a meaning neither quite acknowledged. Marianne felt her heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with lingering weakness from her illness. When she met Owen's eyes, she saw something there that made her breath catch. Hunger, yes, but also restraint. Desire tempered by respect. He looked away first, standing abruptly. I need to check the horses. He strode out into the night, leaving Marianne alone with her racing thoughts. She pressed her hands to her flushed cheeks, trying to steady herself. This was happening too fast. She had only just escaped one disastrous marriage. She had no business letting herself develop feelings for her rescuer, no matter how kind he had been. But her heart, it seemed, had no interest in logic. The next morning, Owen was distant and formal, speaking only when necessary. Marianne felt the loss of their easy camaraderie like a physical ache, but tried not to show it. She went about her tasks quietly, preparing meals and tidying the cabin, giving him the space he seemed to need. This new tension lasted for 2 days before Owen finally broke it. I am sorry, he said abruptly one evening, for being a bear. That's not fair to you. You have nothing to apologize for. This is your home. You did not ask for any of this. That is not why I am being a bear, and we both know it. He ran a hand through his long hair in frustration. This is complicated, Marianne. I know. You have just escaped a bad situation. Last thing you need is me making things harder. You have made nothing hard. You saved my life, Owen. You have been nothing but kind and honorable. That might be the problem, he muttered. She almost smiled at that. How can being honorable be a problem? Because honorable means keeping my distance when what I want is the exact opposite. He turned to face her fully, his storm gray eyes intense. You must know how I feel about you. I am not subtle enough to hide it. Marianne's heart hammered against her ribs. I think you might be surprised by my own feelings on that subject. You are vulnerable right now. You have been through hell. You might think you feel something because I helped you, but that is not the same as genuine affection. Do not tell me what I feel, she said with unexpected heat. I may be young, but I am not a child who cannot distinguish gratitude from something deeper. Yes, you saved my life. Yes, I am grateful for that. But what I feel when I look at you, when we talk in the evenings, when I catch you watching me with that expression you think I do not notice, that has nothing to do with gratitude. Owen took a step toward her, then stopped himself. Marianne, I have known coldness and indifference disguised as duty. I have known what it is to be valued for convenience rather than myself. She moved closer to him, closing the distance he had tried to maintain. You look at me like I matter, like I am someone worth knowing, worth protecting, not because you have to, but because you choose to. Do you have any idea how rare that is, how precious? You deserve more than a mountain hermit who barely remembers how to be civilized. I deserve someone who sees me, who listens when I speak, who treats me like an equal rather than a burden or a possession. She reached up and placed her hand against his chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart beneath her palm. That is what you have given me, Owen. That is why I care for you, not because you rescued me, but because of who you are. For a long moment he stood frozen, clearly waging an internal battle. Then, with a sound somewhere between a growl and a sigh, he gave in. His arms came around her, pulling her against his solid warmth. He was so large that she felt completely enveloped, protected in a way she had never experienced before. This is reckless, he murmured against her hair. Probably, she agreed, but I do not care. He pulled back enough to look down at her, his expression serious. I am not good with fancy words or pretty speeches. But I swear to you, Marianne, I will never leave you behind. I will never choose convenience over your life. What is mine is yours, for as long as you want it. Tears burned behind her eyes, but they were good tears this time. That is the prettiest speech I've ever heard. He cupped her face in his large, calloused hands with infinite gentleness. May I kiss you? I would be disappointed if you did not. His mouth found hers with a tenderness that stole her breath. He kissed her like she was precious, like she was something to be cherished and protected. She melted against him, her hands gripping his broad shoulders, and felt something inside her chest crack open. This was what it was supposed to feel like. This rightness, this perfect sense of belonging. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Owen rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. "I've never felt this way about anyone," he admitted quietly. "Scares me a little. Just a little. Terrifies me," he corrected with a huff of laughter, "but I would rather be terrified with you than safe and alone anymore." They stood wrapped in each other's arms as the fire crackled beside them, and Marianne thought about the strange path that had led her to this moment, the fever that had nearly killed her, the husband who had abandoned her, the endless days of desperate walking. All of it had been terrible, and she would not wish that suffering on anyone. But it had brought her here, to this cabin, to this man who held her like she was the most important thing in his world. "What happens now?" she asked softly. "Now we figure it out together. No more you alone or me alone. We are a pair now, if you are willing." "I am willing." "Good." He kissed her forehead, then her cheek, then her lips again. "Then I guess you are home." The word resonated through her like a bell. Home, not a place, but a person. Not walls and a roof, but strong arms and a steady heart. Home was Owen Pike, mountain man and hermit, who had stumbled across her dying body and chosen to care rather than ride on. The summer faded into autumn, and Marianne settled into her new life with surprising ease. She had expected to miss civilization, to long for the company of other women, for churches and shops and all the comforts of town living. Instead, she found herself content in the isolation of the mountains, happy with just Owen and the wild beauty surrounding them. He taught her to track game through the forest, reading signs in broken twigs and disturbed soil. She learned to recognize different animal prints, to move quietly through the underbrush, to be still and patient when the moment required it. He taught her to shoot his rifle, spending hours with her until she could hit a target more often than not. He taught her to preserve meat for winter, to cure hides, to make candles from rendered fat. "You are a good student," he told her one afternoon as she successfully field-dressed a rabbit she had trapped. "Most city women would faint at the sight of this." "Most city women have not been left to die on the plains and rescued by handsome mountain men," she replied with a teasing smile. "Tends to adjust your perspective on what is important." "Handsome, am I? Fishing for compliments? That does not seem like you." He grinned, an expression that transformed his usually serious face into something boyish and charming. "Maybe you are rubbing off on me, making me vain. If that is the worst influence I have, I think we will survive." He pulled her close despite her bloody hands, kissing her thoroughly. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Marianne Keller. Just wanted you to know that." "The feeling is entirely mutual, Owen Pike." As autumn deepened and the aspens turned gold against the evergreen backdrop, they fell into the rhythms of preparing for winter. Owen hunted extensively, building up their stores of smoked and dried meat. Marianne gathered and preserved everything she could find, filling the cabin with jars of wild berries and edible roots. They cut and stacked firewood until the pile stood taller than Owen, ensuring they would stay warm through the coldest months. Working side by side brought its own intimacy. Marianne grew familiar with the way Owen moved, efficient and powerful, never wasting effort. She learned to anticipate his needs, handing him tools before he asked, understanding his grunts and nods as clearly as full sentences. He, in turn, seemed to read her moods with uncanny accuracy, knowing when she needed conversation and when she preferred comfortable silence. The nights grew longer and colder, and they took to sitting close by the fire, wrapped in furs and each other. Owen would hold her against his chest while she read aloud from the few books he owned, her voice filling the cabin with stories of far-off places and grand adventures. Sometimes they would simply talk for hours, sharing memories and dreams, learning each other's histories with the thoroughness of scholars. "Tell me about Missouri," she asked one evening. "You said you spent time there before coming to the mountains." Owen was quiet for a moment, his arms tightening slightly around her. "Not much to tell. Worked on my father's farm until I was 20. He was a hard man, believed in harsh discipline and harder work. When he tried to arrange a marriage for me with a neighbor's daughter I barely knew, I decided I had enough of living by someone else's rules. So you just left? Packed a bag and walked away one morning. Never looked back. Spent a few years drifting, working odd jobs, learning to survive on my own. Eventually made my way west and found these mountains, felt right in a way nothing else ever had. Built this cabin and decided I was home. Until I invaded, she said with a small smile. Until you made it better, he corrected. I thought I wanted to be alone, but I was just waiting for the right person to share it with. Turns out the right person was worth waiting for. She twisted in his arms to face him. You know, we should probably make this official at some point, for propriety's sake, if nothing else. You want to marry me? He sounded surprised, almost uncertain. Is that really a question? Owen, I am living in your cabin, sleeping in your arms every night, planning a future that includes only you. What else would I want? I just thought, after your last experience with marriage, you might prefer to avoid the institution altogether. My last experience was not really a marriage. It was a transaction. This, she gestured between them, this is what marriage is supposed to be. Partnership, mutual respect, love. Love, he repeated softly, testing the word. I have never said that to anyone before. You do not have to say it. You show me every day in 1,000 ways. But I want to say it. He cupped her face in his hands, his expression fierce with emotion. I love you, Marianne. I love your strength and your courage. I love how you found yourself on the edge of death and chose to fight anyway. I love the way you sing while you cook, how you scrunch up your nose when you are thinking hard about something. I love how you never complain about the isolation or the hard work, how you throw yourself into learning everything I can teach you. I love you so much, it scares the hell out of me sometimes. Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling. I love you too. I love your gentleness despite your strength. I love how you take care of me without making me feel weak. I love your integrity, your honesty, the way you value actions over empty words. I love the life we are building together, and I want to make it permanent. Then we will ride down to the trading post come spring. Find a preacher or a judge, whoever can make it legal. But as far as I'm concerned, you have been my wife since the moment you told me not to tell you what you feel. He smiled at the memory. That was when I knew for certain I was lost. You liked that I stood up to you? I loved that you stood up to me. Showed me you were not going to let anyone push you around again, including me. Proved you were my equal in every way that matters. She kissed him then, pouring everything she felt into it. They finally drew apart. She rested her head against his chest and listened to the steady thunder of his heartbeat. Thank you for finding me, she whispered. Thank you for being worth finding. The first snow came in late October, transforming the mountains into a wonderland of white. Marianne stood in the doorway of the cabin, marveling at the beauty of it, so different from the gray slush she remembered from Pennsylvania winters. Here the snow was pristine and crystalline, catching the sunlight in 1,000 tiny rainbows. Owen came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and tucking her against his warmth. Beautiful, is it not? Breathtaking. I had no idea it could look like this. Wait until you see it in the moonlight, like standing inside a diamond. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the snow fall in soft, fat flakes. Marianne felt a contentment so profound it almost frightened her. How could she have gone from the depths of despair to this perfect happiness in just a few short months? How could she have been so lucky to find love in the wilderness after experiencing only coldness and civilization? You are thinking too hard, Owen murmured against her ear. I can feel it. Just marveling at how strange life can be, how the worst thing that ever happened to me led directly to the best thing. I know what you mean. I spent 5 years alone on this mountain, telling myself I was content with solitude. Then I found you, and suddenly all those years felt like practice, like I was learning to take care of myself so I would know how to take care of us. She turned in his arms, reaching up to run her fingers through his long hair. You take very good care of us. I try. He kissed her softly, then more deeply. Come back inside before you freeze. As winter tightened its grip on the mountains, they settled into a cozy routine. The cabin stayed warm and comfortable thanks to Owen's excellent construction and their massive supply of firewood. They spent the long evenings reading, talking, and simply enjoying each other's company. Owen taught her to play chess on a carved wooden set he had made during a previous winter, and she taught him songs her father had loved. Sometimes storms would rage outside for days, the wind howling like a living thing, snow piling up until the world consisted only of the cabin and the few feet of cleared space around it. During those times, they were truly isolated, cut off from everything and everyone. But Marianne never felt trapped. Instead, she felt safe, protected not just by the solid walls Owen had built, but by his presence itself. "Do you ever worry about being snowed in?" she asked one night as a particularly fierce blizzard battered the cabin. "Not with our supplies and preparation. We could last for months if we had to. I built this place to withstand the worst these mountains can throw at it." I meant emotionally. Does the isolation ever feel like too much? He considered the question seriously. "Used to sometimes. Before you came. There were stretches where I would go weeks without hearing my own voice, and I would start to feel disconnected from everything. Not quite real anymore." He pulled her closer. "But with you here, I have never felt more present, more alive. You ground me in a way I did not know I needed. You do the same for me. Back in my old life, I always felt like I was just going through the motions, playing a role someone else had written for me. Dutiful daughter, then desperate bride. But here with you, I am just myself, fully and completely, no pretense required." "I like yourself," he said with a smile. All of her. As winter wore on, they discovered new depths to their relationship. The enforced closeness could have bred frustration or resentment, but instead, it strengthened their bond. They learned to navigate disagreements with respect and patience, to give each other space when needed despite the small quarters, to find joy in the smallest moments. Marianne discovered that Owen had a playful side that rarely emerged. One morning she woke to find he had used the frost on the window to draw a surprisingly good likeness of her. Another day he ambushed her with a snowball as she stepped outside, grinning like a mischievous boy when she shrieked with surprise. She retaliated, and they ended up in a full-scale snow battle that left them both soaked and laughing. He discovered that she had a wicked sense of humor hidden beneath her proper exterior. She made him laugh with dry observations about the absurdities of her wagon train experience, with clever wordplay, with unexpected moments of pure silliness. He told her repeatedly that her laughter was his favorite sound in the world. By January, they were as comfortable together as people who had been married for decades. They moved around the cabin in a careful dance, always aware of where the other was, anticipating needs and offering help without being asked. They developed private jokes and knowing glances, entire conversations conducted without words. One frozen morning, Owen woke before dawn to find Marianne watching him sleep, her expression tender. "How long have you been staring at me?" he asked, his voice still rough with sleep. "Mom, a while. You look peaceful when you sleep. Less guarded." "I have no reason to be guarded with you." "I know. That is what I was thinking about. How much trust we have built. How safe I feel with you, and how I hope you feel the same with me." He reached for her, pulling her against him beneath the warm furs. "I have never trusted anyone the way I trust you. You could destroy me, Marianne. You hold all my vulnerable places in your hands. I would never hurt you. Not deliberately, not ever. I know. That is why I can give you those pieces of myself." He kissed her forehead. "We are quite a pair, are we not? Two wounded people who found each other and decided to build something new." "The best things are built from broken pieces," she said softly. "They teach you compassion and strength in ways perfection never could." As February arrived and the days began to slowly lengthen, they started talking seriously about the spring and their plans to make their union official. Owen described the trading post, which doubled as a small settlement with perhaps 20 permanent residents. There was a circuit judge who came through every few months, and they would time their trip to coincide with one of his visits. "It is not much," Owen warned. "Rough people, rough place, but they are mostly decent folk trying to survive out here like everyone else. As long as someone can legally marry us, I do not care what it looks like. You are sure you do not want something fancier? We could make the trip to a real town if you wanted. Take a few weeks. Make an occasion of it." She shook her head firmly. I do not need fancy. I do not need an occasion. I just need you and someone to say the words that make it binding in the eyes of the law. Everything else is just decoration. What did I do to deserve you? You showed up when I needed you most. You chose to care when you could have ridden past. You showed me what love is supposed to look like. He pulled her into his lap, holding her close. This spring, then, as soon as the passes are clear and the judge is due, I will make you my wife properly. I already am your wife in every way that matters. True, but I want the whole world to know it, want there to be no question, no doubt, want you to have that security. She understood what he was really saying. He wanted to ensure that no one could ever claim she was not protected, not provided for, not legally entitled to everything he had. It was another way he took care of her, thinking ahead to possibilities she had not even considered. You're going to be stuck with me forever, you know, she teased. No escape. That's the plan. Forever is exactly how long I want you. March brought the first signs of thaw. The snow began to melt, sending streams of water running down the mountainside. The days grew noticeably warmer, though the nights remained cold. Owen started scouting the passes, checking to see when travel would be feasible. Another few weeks, he reported after one such expedition. The main route is still too dangerous, but it is clearing fast. Should be passable by early April. Marianne felt a flutter of nervousness mixed with excitement. I admit I am anxious about seeing other people again. Is that strange? Not strange at all. We've had our own little world here for months. Letting others into it feels like an intrusion. Exactly. What if they are awful? What if they judge us? Then we get married and come straight back home, and we never think about them again. He tilted her chin up, making her meet his eyes. Nothing they say or think can touch what we have. You know that, right? I know. I just want everything to be perfect. It already is perfect. The marriage ceremony is just making it official. His confidence soothed her nerves. Owen had a way of cutting through her worries to the heart of what mattered. She leaned into him, drawing strength from his solid presence. As the snow continued its retreat, the mountains revealed themselves again in all their glory. Green things began pushing up through the wet earth. Birds returned, filling the air with song. The world was waking up, and with it came a sense of renewal and possibility. Owen began preparing for the journey, checking his gear and supplies. They would need to bring furs to trade, both to cover the cost of the marriage license and to stock up on things they could not make or grow themselves. He cleaned his rifle meticulously, checked the shoes on both horses, and made sure everything was in perfect working order. You would think we were heading into battle rather than to a trading post, Marianne observed as she watched him work. Old habits. Out here, being prepared is the difference between life and death. I do not take chances, especially not with you at risk. I trust your judgment completely. That is a dangerous thing, he said with a slight smile, giving someone that much faith. Only if they are not worthy of it. You have proven yourself more than worthy. In early April, Owen declared the passes safe enough for travel. They packed their supplies, loaded the horses, and prepared to make the journey. Marianne felt a strange mix of emotions as she looked back at the cabin. It had become home in a way nowhere else ever had, a sanctuary that represented her new life with Owen. We will be back in less than a week, he assured her, reading her expression accurately. This is still home. Always will be. The ride to the trading post took 2 full days, much of it through breathtaking mountain scenery. Owen kept them at a steady but careful pace, never taking risks on the treacherous trails. He pointed out landmarks and natural wonders, sharing his deep knowledge of the territory. At night, they made camp, and he held her close beneath the stars, whispering promises and endearments that made her heart soar. When they finally arrived at the trading post, Marianne was struck by how small and rough it was. A dozen buildings clustered around a central square, most of them little more than shacks. The trading post itself was the largest structure, a 2-story log building with a covered porch. People stopped to stare as they rode in, clearly curious about the strangers. Marianne felt self-conscious but kept her head high. She was with Owen, and that was all the armor she needed. They dismounted in front of the trading post, and Owen tied the horses securely. Let me do the talking at first, he said quietly. Some of these folks can be prickly with newcomers. She nodded, content to let him take the lead. Inside, the trading post was dim and crowded with goods. Furs hung from the rafters, barrels lined the walls, and shelves held everything from ammunition to fabric. A large man with a graying beard stood behind the counter, his eyes sharp and assessing as they entered. "Well now, Owen Pike as I live and breathe," the man said with genuine pleasure. "Been what, 2 years since you came down?" "About that, Tom. Good to see you still above ground." "Same to you." Tom's gaze shifted to Marianne with obvious curiosity. "And who might this be?" "This is Marianne Keller, my intended. We are here to get married if the judge is due any time soon." Tom's eyebrows rose. "Your intended? Well, I will be. Never thought I would see the day when Owen Pike brought a woman down from that mountain. Judge is here right now as it happens. Arrived yesterday and leaving tomorrow." "Perfect timing then." Tom came around the counter, extending a large hand to Marianne. "Pleased to meet you, miss. You must be something special to catch this bear's attention. He's been turning down lonely trappers' daughters for years." Marianne shook his hand, liking him instinctively despite his rough manners. "The pleasure is mine, sir." "No need for sir, just Tom. Come on. Let me find Judge Morrison for you. He's probably at the saloon." Tom led them across the muddy square to another building with a hand-painted sign declaring it the Snake River Saloon. Inside, a handful of men sat at rough tables, drinking and talking. Tom made directly for an older gentleman sitting alone near the window, working through a plate of food. "Judge Morrison, got a couple here looking to get married if you have time." The judge looked up, revealing intelligent eyes and a weathered face. "Always have time for a wedding. Happier duty than most of what I deal with." He stood and offered his hand first to Owen, then to Marianne. "Judge William Morrison, at your service." "Owen Pike, and this is Marianne Keller. Pleased to make your acquaintance. Now I need to ask you both some questions before we proceed. Standard procedure." He gestured for them to sit. "Miss Keller, are you entering into this marriage of your own free will, without coercion or duress?" "I am," she said firmly. "Are you currently married to anyone else?" "No, sir. I was married previously, but my husband abandoned me and left me for dead when I fell ill. I consider that a dissolution of any vows." Judge Morrison's expression darkened. "Left you for dead? That's a serious accusation." "It is the truth. I have witnesses if the wagon train can be located." "I believe you. Man like that does not deserve the title of husband." He made a note on a piece of paper. "For the purposes of this marriage, we will consider you a widow. Legally simpler and closer to the truth of the matter. Do you agree to this designation?" "I do." He turned to Owen. "And you, Mr. Pike, are you entering into this marriage freely?" "I am." "Have you been married before?" "No, sir." "Do you have the means to support a wife?" "I do. I have my cabin, my land, and my skills. We want for nothing." Judge Morrison nodded approvingly. "Good man. Now, do you have a ring?" Owen reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold band. Marianne gasped softly, having had no idea he possessed such a thing. "It was my mother's," he said quietly. "Only thing I took when I left home. Been carrying it for 12 years, waiting for the right woman." He looked at Marianne with such love that her eyes filled with tears. "You are the right woman." "Oh, Owen," she whispered. Judge Morrison cleared his throat, clearly moved despite himself. "Well then, I think we have everything we need. Tom, can you and one other serve as witnesses?" "Be honored to," Tom said, flagging down another man from across the room. They arranged themselves in a rough semicircle. Judge Morrison pulled out a worn book and opened it to a marked page. His voice, when he spoke, carried the weight of authority and genuine warmth. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here in the sight of God and these witnesses to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony. Marriage is not to be entered into lightly, but reverently, deliberately, and in accordance with the purposes for which it was instituted." Marianne barely heard the traditional words. She was lost in Owen's eyes, seeing in them everything they had been through together, everything they had built, everything they would become. When the judge prompted her for her vows, she spoke clearly and without hesitation. "I, Marianne Keller, take you, Owen Pike, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love, honor, and cherish you in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, as long as we both shall live. You saved my life and gave me a home, not just in your cabin, but in your heart. I will spend every day trying to be worthy of that gift. Owen's voice was rough with emotion when he spoke his own vows. I, Owen Pike, take you, Marianne Keller, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to protect you, provide for you, and love you with everything I am. You brought light into my darkness and taught me that being alone and being lonely are not the same thing. I will never leave you behind. I will never give you cause to doubt. You are my heart, and I am yours. Judge Morrison smiled. By the power vested in me by the territory of Wyoming, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Mr. Pike, you may kiss your bride. Owen cupped Marianne's face gently and kissed her with such tenderness that several of the rough men watching found themselves blinking back unexpected moisture. When they broke apart, she was laughing and crying at the same time, radiant with joy. Tom clapped Owen on the back. Congratulations, this calls for a drink. First round is on me. They celebrated modestly, accepting the congratulations of strangers who seemed genuinely happy for them. Marianne noticed how different these people were from the folks on the wagon train. These were individuals who had chosen hardship and isolation, who understood what it meant to carve a life from wilderness. They respected Owen's choice to live as he did, and they welcomed her without judgment or prying questions. That night, they stayed at the trading post in a small room Tom kept for travelers. It was nothing compared to their cabin, but Marianne did not care. She was legally and officially Owen's wife now, bound to him by law as well as love. How do you feel, Mrs. Pike? Owen asked as they lay together in the narrow bed. Like the luckiest woman alive. And you, Mr. Pike? Like I finally understand what I was waiting for all those years alone. It was you, always you, even before I knew you existed. She kissed him deeply, pouring all her love and gratitude and joy into it. When they made love that night, it felt different, somehow more profound. They were husband and wife now, committed in every possible way. The abandoned girl and the lonely mountain man had found each other and created something beautiful from their brokenness. The next morning, they conducted their business at the trading post, exchanging furs for supplies they needed. Owen bought her fabric for new dresses, needles, and thread, a good pair of boots. He bought coffee and sugar, ammunition, and salt, small luxuries that would make their life easier. Tom threw in a few extras without charge, his wedding gift to them. As they prepared to leave, Judge Morrison found them one last time. I wanted to give you this, he said, handing Marianne an official-looking document. Your marriage certificate. Keep it safe. And Mrs. Pike, if that previous husband of yours ever surfaces and causes trouble, you send word to me through Tom here. I will make sure the law understands what happened. Thank you, Judge, for everything. My pleasure. You two take care of each other. Something special about what you have got. Do not take it for granted. Never, Owen promised. The ride home felt different than the journey out. They were returning as a married couple, officially recognized and protected by law. Marianne kept touching the ring on her finger, marveling at its presence, at what it represented. When the cabin finally came into view, she felt a surge of joy so profound it brought tears to her eyes. This was home. This was where she belonged, with Owen in this wild and beautiful place, building a life that was entirely their own. That night, they celebrated properly, just the two of them. Owen had picked wildflowers along the trail home, and he presented them to her with endearing bashfulness. She arranged them in a jar on the table, touched by the gesture. They ate a special dinner she prepared from their fresh supplies, and afterward they danced to music only they could hear, holding each other close in the firelight. I love you, Mrs. Pike, Owen whispered against her hair. I love you too, Mr. Pike. Thank you for finding me. Thank you for choosing me. Best decision I ever made. The months that followed were among the happiest of Marianne's life. Spring bloomed into summer, and they spent their days working side by side to improve their home and secure their future. Owen expanded the garden plot, and Marianne planted vegetables she'd bought as seeds at the trading post. She tended them carefully, delighting in watching things grow under her care. They explored the mountains together, with Owen showing her hidden meadows carpeted in wildflowers, crystal-clear streams teeming with fish, vistas that stretched forever under endless sky. He taught her to fish, to identify edible plants, to read the weather in the clouds, She soaked up every lesson, eager to become as capable and self-sufficient as he was. In July, Marianne realized she had missed her monthly courses twice in a row. She said nothing at first, wanting to be certain, but as the weeks passed and other signs appeared, she could no longer deny the truth. She was carrying Owen's child. She told him one evening after supper, unable to keep the secret any longer. "Owen, I have something to tell you." He looked up from the harness he was mending, instantly alert to the serious note in her voice. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I'm more than all right. I'm pregnant." For a moment he simply stared at her, the words not seeming to register. Then his face transformed with wonder and joy, so pure it took her breath away. He crossed to her in 3 quick strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her with exquisite gentleness. "A baby? We are having a baby?" "Yes, I'm about 3 months along, I think. The baby should come in late winter." He pulled back to look at her, his hands framing her face. "Marianne, Lord, I do not even know what to say. I'm going to be a father?" "You're going to be an amazing father," she assured him. "You're going to teach our child everything you have taught me. How to be strong and capable and kind. How to respect this land and live in harmony with it. How to love without reservation." Tears actually spilled from his eyes, and she realized she had never seen him cry before. "I'm going to take such good care of you both," he vowed. "I swear it. Nothing will ever harm you or our baby. Nothing." "I know. I have never doubted that for a moment." From that day forward, Owen became even more protective and attentive than before. He insisted she rest more, took over the heavier chores without discussion, monitored her health with the vigilance of a hawk. At first, Marianne found it overwhelming, but she quickly realized it came from a place of love and wonder. He was amazed by the fact that she was growing their child, and he wanted to do everything possible to support her through it. As her belly began to swell, he would spend hours with his hand resting on it, feeling for movement. When the baby finally quickened, his expression of awe and joy made her fall in love with him all over again. "There," she said, guiding his hand to where she felt the flutter. "Do you feel that?" "I feel it. Our baby. Lord, Marianne, this is real. Very real. And getting more real every day." As autumn arrived again, Owen began making preparations with military precision. He built a cradle from smooth pine, carving it with care and sanding it until there were no rough edges. He stocked extra firewood, extra food, extra everything they might need during the vulnerable months after the baby arrived. He made sure their medical supplies were complete, including clean cloth for bandages and strong alcohol for sterilization. "I wish there was a doctor closer," he fretted one evening, "if something goes wrong." "Women have been having babies without doctors for thousands of years," Marianne reminded him gently. "I am strong and healthy. The baby is growing well. Everything is going to be fine." "You cannot know that." "No, but I can believe it, and I can trust that if anything does go wrong, you will handle it. You always do." Her confidence in him helped ease some of his worry, though she knew he would not truly relax until the baby was safely born. She loved him for his concern, for the way he valued her life and their child's above all else. Winter settled in again, and Marianne found herself grateful for the timing. By the time the deep cold arrived, she was large and uncomfortable, glad to stay inside where it was warm. Owen kept the cabin toasty, the fire always burning bright. He rubbed her aching back without needing to be asked, helped her with tasks that had become difficult, and read to her during the long evenings when she was too tired to do anything but rest. "You are going to spoil me," she teased one night as he brought her tea and propped pillows behind her back. "That is the plan. You are carrying our child. You deserve to be pampered." "What did I ever do to deserve you?" "You survived. You fought to live when you could have given up. You chose me when you could have left." He kissed her forehead. "I am the lucky one, Marianne. Never forget that." In late February, just as the first signs of spring began to appear, Marianne woke in the dark hours before dawn with a sharp pain in her belly. She lay still for a moment, wondering if she had imagined it. Then it came again, stronger this time, and she knew. "Owen," she said, shaking his shoulder. "Owen, wake up, it is time." He came instantly awake, alert and focused. "You are certain?" "The pains have started. Yes, I'm certain." She saw a flash of fear cross his face, but he pushed it down, becoming the calm, capable man she needed. "All right, tell me what to do." The next hours were a blur of pain and effort. Owen followed her instructions perfectly, heating water, preparing clean cloths, supporting her when she needed to move. He never panicked, never faltered, his steady presence an anchor in the storm of childbirth. As dawn broke and light streamed through the windows, Marianne felt the overwhelming urge to push. Owen was there, his strong hands supporting her, his voice encouraging her. "You can do this. You are the strongest woman I have ever known. Just a little more, my love. Just a little more." With a final tremendous effort, she felt the baby slip free. Owen caught the tiny body with shaking hands, and seconds later, the cabin filled with the strong, angry cry of a newborn. "A boy," Owen said, his voice thick with emotion. "Marianne, we have a son." He cleaned the baby quickly and wrapped him in soft cloth before placing him in her arms. Marianne looked down at the tiny face, the shock of dark hair, the perfect little features, and felt love explode in her chest with an intensity that left her breathless. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "We have been waiting for you." Owen sat beside them, his arm around her shoulders, gazing at their son with wonder. "He is perfect. Absolutely perfect. What should we name him? I was thinking, if you agree, we could name him after your father. You have spoken so highly of him, it would be a way to honor his memory." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "My father's name was Marcus Keller." "Marcus Pike," Owen said, testing it. "I like it. Strong name for a strong boy." "Marcus Pike," she agreed. "Our son." They sat together as the morning light grew stronger, marveling at the tiny life they had created. Marcus nursed for the first time, his small mouth finding what he needed instinctively. Owen watched with fascination, his hand gently cradling the baby's head. "I promise you, son," he said quietly, "you will never know what it is to feel unwanted or unloved. You will grow up knowing you are cherished, that your life matters, that you always have a home with us." Marianne reached up and kissed him. "We are a family now. A real family." "The best family," he agreed. The weeks that followed were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Marcus was a healthy baby with a good appetite and strong lungs. He kept them awake at all hours, but neither of them minded. Owen proved to be a natural father, patient and gentle with the tiny infant. He would walk Marcus around the cabin during crying jags, humming tunelessly but effectively. He changed soiled cloths without complaint and learned to swaddle the baby snugly, just the way Marcus liked it. Marianne watched him with their son and fell even more deeply in love. Seeing this powerful, capable man reduced to tender mush by a 7-pound infant was one of the most beautiful things she had ever witnessed. As spring fully arrived and Marianne recovered her strength, they ventured outside again, with Marcus bundled against the lingering cold. Owen had fashioned a kind of carrier that allowed her to wear the baby against her chest, leaving her hands free. They took long walks, showing Marcus his mountain home, talking to him about everything they saw. "He cannot possibly understand any of this," Marianne said with amusement, as Owen pointed out different types of trees to their 3-month-old son. "Maybe not now, but I am establishing the habit. By the time he is old enough to understand, he will be so used to learning from us that it will be natural. You have thought this through." "I have thought about everything to do with him. Want to do it right, Marianne. Want to be the kind of father I wish I had." She squeezed his hand. "You already are. Marcus is so lucky to have you." As the months passed, they settled into their new life as a family of 3. Marcus grew rapidly, hitting all his milestones right on schedule. He smiled early, at just 6 weeks, and the first time he did, Owen actually whooped with joy. He began sleeping through the night at 4 months, much to his exhausted parents' relief. He was a happy baby, content to watch the world with wide, curious eyes that were turning the same stormy gray as his father's. That summer, they made another trip to the trading post to stock up on supplies and show off their son. Tom and the others made a great fuss over Marcus, and even Judge Morrison happened to be passing through. He pronounced the baby handsome and healthy and congratulated them on their obvious happiness. "You have built something good here," he told them. "Hold on to it. Treasure it. Not everyone is fortunate enough to find what you two have." "We know," Marianne assured him. "We never take it for granted." As Marcus grew into a toddler, their lives continued to evolve. He was a curious, fearless child who wanted to explore everything. Owen built a fence around the cabin so Marcus could play outside safely, and they took turns watching him as he discovered rocks and bugs and flowers with equal enthusiasm. "He is going to be a handful," Marianne predicted, as she watched their 2-year-old son determinedly trying to climb a tree that was far too big for him. "Just like his mother," Owen said with a grin, "stubborn and brave and refusing to let obstacles stop him." "I think he gets that from you, actually." "Then he's doomed to be twice as stubborn. Poor kid." They laughed together, comfortable in their roles, secure in their love. Marianne sometimes thought back to that desperate girl who had been left to die on the plains, and she could hardly believe that was her. She had been so lost, so alone, so certain her story was ending. Instead, it had been a beginning. The best beginning she could have imagined. When Marcus was 3, they were surprised and delighted to discover Marianne was pregnant again. This time she knew what to expect, and the pregnancy proceeded smoothly. Owen was no less protective, but he tempered his worry with confidence born of experience. Their daughter arrived on a clear October morning in 1871, entering the world with the same forceful personality she would display for the rest of her life. They named her Ruth after Owen's mother, and she proved to be the perfect complement to her brother. Where Marcus was thoughtful and deliberate, Ruth was impulsive and energetic. Where he preferred to observe before acting, she dove into everything head first. "We are going to have our hands full with this one," Owen predicted as he cradled his infant daughter, watching her already trying to focus on his face with determined intensity. "But what an adventure it will be," Marianne replied, leaning against him to admire their newest addition. The years flowed past, marked by the changing seasons and the growth of their children. Marcus grew into a serious, responsible boy who absorbed everything Owen taught him about tracking and hunting and surviving in the wilderness. Ruth was right behind him, refusing to be left out of anything her older brother did, keeping up through sheer determination. They added onto the cabin as the family grew, building extra rooms so the children could have their own space. Owen taught Marcus to help with the construction, passing on his skills to the next generation. Marianne taught both children to read and write, using the small collection of books they had accumulated and supplementing with lessons she created herself. Life was not always easy. There were harsh winters when supplies ran low. There were injuries and illnesses that tested their resourcefulness. There were moments of frustration and worry and fear. But through it all, they had each other. The love between Owen and Marianne never dimmed, never faded. If anything, it grew stronger with each passing year, deepened by shared experiences and mutual respect. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they left the children with Tom at the trading post for 2 days and rode back to the place where Owen had found her. They stood together on the spot where he had pulled her dying body from the grass, and Marianne marveled at how far they had come. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had ridden a different direction that day?" she asked. "Every moment of every day, I thank God that I rode in exactly the direction I did." He pulled her close, his arms strong and sure around her. "Finding you was the best thing that ever happened to me. You and our children, you are my whole world. You saved me in every way a person can be saved," she said, looking up at him with eyes full of love. "You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You taught me that being left behind was not the end of my story, but the beginning of the best chapter." "We saved each other," he corrected. "I was just existing before you came along, not really living. You taught me that loving someone, building a life together, that is what makes all the hard work and struggle worthwhile. You gave me a reason to be more than just a man surviving alone on a mountain." They kissed then, deep and lingering, full of all the love and gratitude and joy they felt. When they finally pulled apart, they stood hand in hand, looking out over the vast Wyoming wilderness that had become their home. "Ready to go back to our children?" Owen asked. "Always. Let us go home." They rode back to the trading post side by side, partners in every sense of the word, the abandoned bride and the lonely mountain man who had found each other against all odds and built a love that would last forever. Their story had begun with loss and desperation, but it had transformed into something beautiful. A real home, not made of logs and stone, but of love and commitment and unwavering devotion. As they collected their excited children and began the journey back to their cabin, Marianne reflected on the strange and wonderful path her life had taken. She had been left behind, yes, but in being left behind, she had been found. Found by a man who saw her worth when others saw only burden. Found by a love that was real and true and lasting. Found by a life that, while hard, was rich with meaning and joy. The wagon train that had abandoned her was long gone, scattered to whatever fates awaited them in Oregon Territory. Thomas Garrett was nothing but a bitter memory, a cautionary tale about the dangers of marrying without love. But she had Owen and Marcus and Ruth. She had a cabin in the mountains where the air was clear and the nights were filled with stars. She had purpose and partnership and passion. She had been left behind, and in being left behind, she had found her way home. Not to a place, but to a person, to the mountain man who had saved her life and then made that life worth living, to the man who loved her completely, who cherished her unreservedly, who had built a family with her from the broken pieces of their past. As the sun set behind the mountains and painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Marianne rode beside her husband with their children laughing and chattering around them. This was home. This was family. This was love. And she would not trade it for anything the civilized world had to offer. The wagon train had moved on without her, but she had moved on to something so much better. She had found her mountain man, and he had become her everything, her protector, her partner, her great love. Together they had created a legacy that would endure long after they were gone, in the children they raised and the love they shared. She had been lost, and now she was found. She had been abandoned, and now she was cherished. She had nearly died, and now she was fully, completely alive. All because a man with storm-gray eyes and a heart big enough to hold her brokenness had chosen to stop, to help, to care. All because Owen Pike had found her when she needed him most and had become the home she had been searching for her entire life.